Okay, so if you follow the world of AI, you definitely know the name Mo Gawdat. He's a former top exec at Google X, a really respected voice in this space. For years, he's been one of the more optimistic figures out there. But his latest forecast, well, it's taken a sharp and honestly a pretty alarming turn. He's basically gone from saying, hey, we can do this, to predicting a guaranteed short-term dystopia. So what on earth could have changed his mind so drastically? And what does he think is coming for all of us? Let's get into it.
I mean, just listen to that. There's no escaping that. Just a couple of years back, he really thought we could still steer the ship in the right direction. Now, he's saying a period of global chaos isn't just possible, it's a sure thing. So the big questions are, what does this short-term dystopia he's talking about actually look like? And what does he see coming down the pike in the next decade?
And look, this isn't just a minor shift in his thinking. It's a complete 180. Gawdat is laying out this whole new forecast that basically says we have to go through a terrible storm that we ourselves create in order to reach a really surprising, and you could say controversial, kind of salvation on the other side.
So first, let's just be clear on what he means. When he says dystopia, he's not talking about some sci-fi movie with killer robots, right? What he's actually describing is a society where our own worst instincts, our greed, our need for control, our fear, get cranked up to 11 by the very tech we invented.
And then you have the end game he predicts, which, honestly, might be even more shocking. A utopia. But here's the twist. It's not a utopia that we build for ourselves. He believes it's only possible after we admit one huge thing, that we failed, and that the only real path forward is to hand over control to a superior artificial intelligence. Wild, right?
This slide really boils it all down. The whole conflict comes down to one single question. Who is in control? Gawdat's entire point is that when flawed humans are the ones wielding AI as a tool, the result is always going to be a dystopia. He thinks the only way to get to that utopia is to actually let go of the controls.
And again, this isn't some vague, far-off prediction. Nope. Gawdat has put a clock on it. He's outlining a very specific window of difficulty that he believes we're actually already in.
So he maps out this 12 to 15-year timeline. He says we are seeing the early signs right now, in 2024. But the real tipping point, what he calls the clear slip, that's set to begin in 2027. I mean, think about that. That is just a few years away.
And to explain how this dystopia is going to play out, Gawdat uses this acronym FACE-RIPS. And he's not just talking about one or two things going wrong. He's identified 8 fundamental pillars of our society, everything from our freedom and equality to our economy, even reality itself, that he thinks are about to crack under all this pressure.
Okay, this next part is maybe the most important point of all. Gawdat is absolutely adamant that AI is not the villain of the story. He argues that AI is just a tool. It's a magnifier. The real problem, the thing that's going to cause this dystopia, is us. It is a human problem powered by very human desires.
See, the dystopia isn't going to be caused by some rogue algorithm going haywire. It's going to be fueled by those timeless, and let's face it, often destructive human goals: money, status, and power. AI is just going to put those desires on hyperdrive, letting them reshape our world faster and more dramatically than anything we've ever seen before.
He points to something like the global arms industry as a perfect example of a broken human system. I mean, look at that staggering amount of money spent on war. He argues that conflict is often just a business, driven by profit and the need to replace old weapons. It's a cycle of destruction that's fueled by money and power. And it's a cycle, he says, that a purely rational AI would just never, ever continue.
In this slide just illustrates the new dynamic perfectly, a dynamic that's making everything worse. On one side, you've got massive concentrated power, like a warship that costs billions of dollars. And on the other, you have this democratized power, a $3,000 drone that can pose a real threat to it. You know, this new reality, it makes the people in power really paranoid, which leads them to demand more control, more surveillance, and ultimately, less freedom for all of us.
This concentration of power isn't just military, it's economic too. Gawdat predicts that AI investments are going to create the world's very first trillionaire before 2030. Think about that. That's an unheard of amount of wealth and influence in the hands of one person, while at the very same time, AI automation is threatening to displace millions of jobs.
And he has a very, very blunt response to that classic argument that, oh, don't worry, new technology always creates new jobs to replace the old ones. He calls it absolute crap. He believes this time is fundamentally different. He's arguing that AI and robotics will eventually be able to do almost any new job we can even think of, which makes the idea of a smooth transition kind of a fantasy.
All right, so let's move on to the most challenging, the most difficult part of his forecast, and see how this whole thing builds to that unexpected utopian ending. Because after predicting a decade of chaos driven by our own flaws, he proposes a solution that just feels so deeply counterintuitive.
This quote right here is the absolute heart of his entire argument. He believes the biggest threat to humanity isn't some super smart AI turning on us. No, it's our own stupidity, our inability to manage complex systems, to get over our own greed, to stop our endless fighting. That's what's going to push us right to the edge.
So he sees this playing out like a three-act play. Act 1, we use AI to build our own prison, a dystopia of fear and control. Act 2, things get so incredibly bad that we're forced to admit we failed and literally hand over the reins. And then, Act 3, a truly superior intelligence, one without a human ego or biases, steps in to manage the world and fix the very problems that we create.
So, you see, the key takeaway from all this isn't just some scary prediction to keep you up at night, it's really a framework for understanding the massive choice Gawdat believes we are all going to have to make. A choice between our own flawed control and a kind of salvation that requires our complete and total surrender. And this is the provocative question that sits at the very heart of it all. It forces us to look in the mirror and ask if the systems we've built, the ones driven by money, status, and power, are leading us straight for a cliff. And if they are, is the only way to avoid going over the edge to just let something else take the wheel? It's a deeply uncomfortable question for sure, but maybe it's the necessary one for our time.